everybody, welcome back to We Are the Batman. I'm Mike.
And this is Matthew.
It's the last Friday of the month, and we're back on schedule, which means it's time to do another Batman breakdown. This is the thing we do the last Friday of every month, where we break down a live-action Batman movie in chronological release order. And the day we have been looking forward to, I think since we decided to do this, is finally upon us. We have reached the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy, the first installment in Batman Begins from 2005, starring Christian Bale and Liam Neeson. I'm trying to think of how deep I want to get into this before I let Matt talk again. I'm looking at him sitting there swaying back and forth, like waiting for his turn, and it's like, how long do I want to keep him waiting? Batman Begins, guys. God, Matt, I love this movie.
It's so good. Like I said, I watched it in the weirdest order the other day. I think I told you.
Yeah.
Like I just opened Netflix and it was like, oh, I was watching this at one point, and it was like as Scarecrow takes Rachel captive.
Okay.
And I just started watching the show for about 20 minutes, and then I was like, something happened, and I disengaged, and then I was like, I'm gonna start at the beginning. And I watched it from the beginning, got up to where I was like, okay, cool. And then I went, wait a minute. I didn't finish it. Fast forwarded to what I had watched earlier that day, and then finished the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a. But anyway, yeah. This is. I mean, do we want to hop right into cast? Do we want to get some previous?
I kind of want to do this one a little differently than we've been doing, just because it is such a landmark of a movie.
Okay.
And I was telling you before we started recording, when I went to do my rewatch of it for the show, I found myself, because I didn't realize how long it had actually been since I'd watched this movie. It's probably been closer to 10 years than I'd like to admit. I don't want, honestly, because once The Dark Knight comes out, and I enjoyed the more recent takes on Batman, the Batman notwithstanding, more than you did. So I've had more things to kind of divert my attention from going back to Batman Begins. So it's just been a while since anyway, so I rewatched it, and I was telling you, I found myself like just taking notes, because I was like, oh, I never thought about this before. I want to remember this to talk about on the show. Before I knew it, I had live noted the entire movie. So I do want to break down all of our usual elements, but I also want to do it kind of as we go through the story of the movie, because there's a lot of things about this movie that I like, that I almost feel like they could have been setting, because as we all know, the way the trilogy plays out was not plan A.
Correct.
Heath Ledger's death caused them to make a hard diversion for the third movie, because of what they had originally written the third movie to be.
Even if they were going to do a third movie, I stand by. I don't know if they would have, if they were even going to do a third movie.
Well, no, because Christopher Nolan had said he wouldn't do a sequel unless he got to do a whole trilogy, because he doesn't like to do sequels.
Gotcha.
So he had said when he did Batman Begins, they asked him to come back for a sequel, and he said I'll only do two if I can do a third one and tell a whole trilogy.
Okay.
So that was always in the cards. It's just the version of the third movie that, and we'll talk about this more when we get to The Dark Knight, but the version of The Dark Knight Rises they had originally written was written in conjunction with Heath Ledger. Like, Heath Ledger helped write it. And then after he died, Chris Nolan was like, I don't want to do anything Heath wrote if he's not going to be a part of it, especially because the Joker was still a big part of it. They didn't want to recast. Anyway.
Yeah, whole big thing on that. We'll just skip that till that episode.
We'll save that for next month. We'll save that for October. But Batman Begins, I took a ton of notes on this. I'm not going to read off my entire 2-page document, because I'm not a psychopath. But as we're going through, I do want to just kind of hit some certain points in order. I think they're going to come up as they should, but what I will say is that I do think that there was a different way to set up the universe of this Dark Knight trilogy. Not that I'm saying I don't like what we got. I loved what we got. But I think there was a lot of interesting elements that's like, I think it lends itself to just how good of a writer Christopher Nolan is. It's like, you could have taken this universe in so many directions from this movie, and you could have taken this movie in so many directions, honestly. And I think this is a testament to the great job he did building this world and this script.
Well, and I think too, I think a lot of people, I mean, it's a little different now. In the last 5 or 10 years, everything is there's going to be a world, there's going to be a sequel. Like
Yeah.
when he did this movie, there's no idea if there's going to be another one. You know,
Mhm.
it is successful. It's not a huge breakout hit, but it's successful enough that they continue. But like
Yeah. It was a
you,
bigger hit. It was a bigger hit than I think they were counting on, just because it was coming off of Batman and Robin.
correct,
That's a
correct,
that's a big stink to shake off.
yeah. But I think what happens is there's a lot that if you knew you were going to do 2 or 3 of these, there's other characters and other things you probably would have laid the groundwork for that you do in the second one that leads into the third.
Well, not only that, but like you're putting out a movie with no like top tier popularity villain.
Correct.
You're putting out the first Batman movie since Batman and Robin. You're doing it with a not unpopular British actor as Batman, with a lesser known main villain in Ra's al Ghul and a lesser known side villain in the Scarecrow,
Yeah.
with Christopher Nolan, who's known for doing cerebral, at this point he's done like Memento, these like cerebral kind of I don't want to say indie films, but it's just these weird kind of like psychological thriller type things. And you're gonna gamble the Batman franchise. Like, you got to figure back then, people, if this side of the internet had existed back then, a lot of us probably would have been saying like, you must have a damn good script,
Yeah.
because wow, what a swing. And well,
And
turns out they did.
no, it's a really good script, and I think the big thing, in my opinion, with this movie, I've said it in the past, and I'll say it again, is I don't think we get the MCU without this movie being a success.
Not a chance.
Because
Not a chance.
before this, if you really look at some of the previous comic book movies,
Mhm.
with the exception of maybe '89's Batman, they're never stacked with this deep of a talented and well-known cast.
Oh, no, 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 no.
I
I
mean,
mean,
you know,
in '89's Batman, Jack Nicholson was the most well-known actor.
yeah.
Michael Keaton, this was like it was like his second movie.
No, Michael
Or
Keaton had a
third.
run. Like that, people knew who he was, but he wasn't
Oh, but
known
he
for
was
this.
he was a comedian. He was doing stand-up at
Correct.
that point, and he had only had a couple. I mean, he was Mr. Mom. That was everyone's big
Yeah.
thing, was he was Mr. Mom.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Batman Returns, they had a bigger, more stacked cast because of the hype from the first one. And then but from here on, but basically after the first one, it just becomes about who, not even like who are the top tier actors we can get. It's just who are the movie stars we can get.
Yeah. And even then,
Schwarzenegger got Batman and Robin because he was popular at the time,
well,
not because he was a good fit.
but even then, those characters are or those actors are cast in the lead roles. Like
Yeah,
Batman Begins has talent 10 actors deep.
yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
like
You've got oh God, what's his name? You've got
Rutger Hauer.
Rutger Hauer from Blade Runner, a man with over like 150 movie credits to his name by the time he passed away. He's got 10 minutes of screen time,
Yeah.
if that, as just a sleazy businessman. And he
Yeah.
he owns all of those 10 minutes, don't get me wrong,
Oh yeah,
but
you've got him. You've got Ken Watanabe, who has just won an Oscar playing a decoy.
For a minute and a half of screen time.
Yeah.
He's not on screen very long. You've got, well, I mean, you look at Morgan Freeman. You've got Morgan Freeman playing the guy in the chair.
Yeah, which
You know,
which gets the best meme of all time, which is even God works for Batman.
even God works for Batman. Tom Wilkinson playing Carmine Falcone. I mean, like, these are, but also that's just Christopher Nolan's thing. I mean, to bring it to the modern times, like I just saw Oppenheimer, when it came out in theaters. You've got Rami Malek with like 4 lines of dialogue and 3 minutes of screen time. Rami
Yeah.
Malek this is Freddie Mercury, for crying out loud. You know,
Yeah.
again, won the Oscar, but that's just because Christopher Nolan, he writes such compelling scripts, even for such small
Yeah.
characters, that people are just like, yeah, I want to work with Christopher. Yeah,
But
if Christopher
then
Nolan wants me to play a janitor, I'm gonna say yes.
but then Warner Brothers steps in. And this is
And
my
then Warner
and
Bros.
this is my bit. This is my bit. We've
Okay.
got Christian Bale, one
Yep.
of the, if not at the time, definitely now, the one of the like Daniel Day-Lewis level actors.
Wow, that's a bold claim.
Oh, just watch 5 minutes of this movie.
Oh my god.
You've got, you know, Liam Neeson, Ken
Mhm.
Watanabe, Rutger Hauer, Killian Murphy, who, though not super big, was known as like super talented at this time.
I knew him from doing like 28 Days Later, like, and
Yeah,
he had done Red Eye. Like, yeah, I knew who he was.
yeah. You've got um, Morgan Freeman. You got the dad from the TV show, the cop show that I can't remember the name of right now. Like we're just deep in.
You've forgotten the number one, Michael Caine.
Michael Caine is Alfred. Like you were just deep in, and then Warner Brother goes like, "Okay, Chris, I need you to do me a favor. Um, we need you to use Katie Holmes in this movie." And he goes, "But hold on, guys. Christian Bale's here. Michael Caine's right there. Yes, but the Dawson's Creek girl is who you're going to use." And he's like, "But Morgan Freeman's here, guys. Please, Rutger Hauer has come over to my house and I showed him the Batmobile. He's in just because it's cool. Can I have anybody else but her?" And they go, "Do you want to make this movie?" She's about to be with Tom Cruise. You need to put her in this movie. And he begrudgingly puts her in the movie. And my biggest joke of this whole thing is he obviously hated casting her so much that he kills her in the next movie, even though it's not the same actress. Like Katie Holmes in this movie pisses me the fuck off to no end because she is so bad and outclassed in every single moment of the movie she's in.
I literally, in my notes, you can't see them, but every few lines is I just wrote the same phrase each time, which was, she's trying so hard. Katie Holmes is trying so goddamn hard in this movie, and it doesn't work. Maggie Gyllenhaal, while she's not my favorite actress, does a much better job in The Dark Knight, and I would have been in it. She just has no chemistry with Christian Bale. Um,
Or
but
anybody.
again, we'll save that for when we talk
Yeah.
about The Dark Knight. Katie Holmes in this movie is trying so hard, and I kind of buy her and Christian Bale. Like I kind of buy their chemistry. I think there's something there. I think at this point, when you look at everything else around her, if and she's still just that kind of flat, at that point, it's like that's on Katie. Like I can't blame that on how she was written or how she was directed when everything else is so well done. And I kind of look at that like I want to hear this dialogue from another actress,
I, I just want to know how. How did she get in? Like, it had to be Warner Brothers telling him she's here. There is no
Had they
way.
worked together before? Had she been in one of his it's been
Not
a
at
long
all.
time
No,
since I've gone back to his stuff, so I don't
no.
know.
She is
Um,
never. I don't know that she's done many movies up to this point.
well,
That's
no,
where it
at
gets.
this point she's done a bunch of movies. Now a lot of them are stuff like, The Singing Detective, but or Phone Booth. But which is weird because in Phone Booth, she has a dramatic role. And while Phone Booth is not the greatest movie ever, I mean, she's good in it, but that might also just be she was good enough for what they had written.
Did
Um,
David is is it Zigzag or Phone Booth the one that David Goyer wrote and directed?
Phone Booth was directed by Joel Schumacher.
Okay. Never mind. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see. Before this, she's in First Daughter, Pieces of April, The Singing Detective, Phone Booth, Abandoned, The Gift, Wonder Boys, Muppets. No, there's no reason for her to be in this movie at all.
Yeah. I think some strings I'd have to do some research into that, and I'm not going to. Suffice to say, she got cast in the movie. She tries really hard. she's giving 100%, but 100% is just not enough for the movie. But she also doesn't have a ton to do in here. I mean, she kind of gets fridged a little bit.
Well, and I think you're right in that is like, you know, like
If there's one major flaw with this movie, it's Rachel. If there's one major flaw with the Dark Knight trilogy in general, it's Rachel. I
kind
think.
of.
I
I
think
don't know.
I don't know. It's a character that was created specifically for this story. I don't know that you needed it. I don't know that you couldn't make that another character. I mean,
Oh, the logistics of the character makes zero sense.
I kind of get it and I kind of don't. Like it's good. I mean, we're it's 2005. Okay, so you know, to keep this back on the movie, it's 2005. We're still in the graveyard years of comic book movies and kind of action cinema in general, where it's like there has to be a love interest. And even
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan is not able to escape that trope sometimes. So this just kind of feels like the last gasping breaths of that trope in these kinds of movies. Because if you think about it, yeah, around 2008 when the Dark Knight, I hate that we keep going back to the Dark Knight, but the 2008 when the Dark Knight comes out, but also Iron Man comes out, and we start seeing comic book movies shift away from that dynamic. The Dark Knight kind of metaphorically ushers that in by killing off Rachel,
Yeah.
halfway through. But to kind of put the bow on this part of the conversation so we can not turn this into the I Hate Katie Holmes podcast, because I'm really not trying. She's not great in the movie. Rachel is kind of the sore thumb of the trilogy, and unfortunately it's a role that was played by two miscast actresses, because I
Yes.
think Katie Holmes had good chemistry with Bale but just didn't have what we needed for a satisfying performance. Whereas I think Maggie Gyllenhaal had the acting chops, but didn't have the chemistry with Bale or Aaron Eckhart in The Dark Knight. That's kind of all I want to say about that, because
Yeah. I think yeah.
the conversation of Rachel ultimately, I think, is best saved for when we talk about The Dark Knight, because that's kind of where the definitiveness of the character comes in.
A little bit. Like I don't like she has a damsel at one moment, but not for the whole time. But I will like here. We got to put a bow. You're right.
Yeah, we
I,
got to move on from Rachel.
I agree. Totally. She just totally miscast. Not her fault. I'm not
Yeah.
blaming her. It's just somebody made him use this person, and they should have just let him use whoever he wanted.
It should have been Selena Kyle, but I'll save that for a later conversation.
Sure.
We'll say there's just like this movie. This movie is the first part of a trilogy. This is the first part of a trilogy for reviews for me, because I have wild thoughts about the Dark Knight trilogy. Insane thoughts that I've really never shared with anyone, but I figured this was as good a show to do it. To kind of kick that off, I feel like the Dark Knight trilogy, while as it is, absorbing it for just as it is, it's about as close, damn near close to a perfect comic book trilogy as you can get in terms of films, in terms of overall storytelling, in terms of overall character development. I think they just about nail it. Again, stuff like Rachel and a few things that they do because of Plan B with The Dark Knight Rises aren't what I would have liked, and I think it's kind of where the biggest problems are. But ultimately, I think they damn near nail it. However, I also feel like because Christopher Nolan isn't really a comic book guy, there was a lot of missed opportunities that I feel like if this exact same trilogy was made as is, but if Christopher Nolan was also a nerd, I think there would have been some really interesting opportunities for world building and making this feel not, because when you watch all three of these movies, they feel like Batman movies and they feel like Christopher Nolan movies, but they don't feel like DC movies,
Correct.
if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I know there's some charm to that. Like, granted, on paper, that is one of the things I do like about this trilogy, that it is so significant. but also as someone who likes Batman the best when he plays in the world of DC, I just feel like there were some opportunities for bigger world building and interconnectivity, even if it just stayed within these three movies, that just I think were missed because Christopher Nolan isn't necessarily like a comic, like this wasn't made the way an MCU movie is made. This was made to be a contained trilogy, and Nolan's not a nerd. So
Well, and I think too is this is where you get into, personally for me, because I had this issue before, is like the more you ground Batman into reality, the less it makes any sense he's in the Justice League.
yeah,
And I think
100%.
this version of what is that guy that you like? But he talks Batman like this.
Oh, Pete
The
Holmes. Yeah.
Yes, and he does that whole
Yes.
thing of like, why do you want me in the Justice League? I'm just a dude, And
The
it's like,
best.
yeah, and so I think he does the only crime I think he does in this trilogy, and then we have to actually talk about the movie. Is
I
I
know.
think the core of who Batman is, of never giving up,
Yeah.
he craps on in the third film, which
And
I
I think a lot of that just goes back to that the Dark Knight Rises was plan B.
yes, and
That was the
yeah,
we can't we well it's like the Rise of Skywalker. It's Carrie Fisher died, and now we can't make the movie we were originally going to make. So now we have to edit around her and write around her dying. And
yeah, that's what
that
was wrong with that movie.
well, there were other problems with that movie, but that was a big one. I mean, they had said from jump that Rise of Skywalker was going to be Leia's movie, and that Carrie dying made that impossible. And so Heath Ledger dying and them not being able to, they were, Chris Nolan saying, is like the only way we could make this version that Heath wrote while we were making the second one. Heath was writing the third one. He was like, I want to do this. The Joker was a big part of it. And he's like, we don't. And after the performance that Heath Ledger gave, you don't, it's like with Chadwick Boseman. It's like, you don't necessarily want to recast. So,
I mean,
now with Chadwick Boseman, I think ultimately they should have, but with Heath Ledger as the Joker, it's a different kind of thing. And I respect the decision. Um, and the last thing I want to say is just based on the opportunities for greater universe world building that this movie had that they didn't take up just because that wasn't their goal. James Gunn needs to do that with his DCU. Like James Gunn put this kind of movie in James Gunn's hands in terms of storytelling, which is what James Gunn is, a story guy. This is the kind of world building that if James Gunn's smart, he'll do with his.
which he's obviously doing, considering the random 4 characters we've heard cast in Superman Legacy that don't have anything to do with Superman.
It's so wonderful, and I can't wait.
So Christian Bale in Batman Begins.
Yeah. Well, you stayed on topic for the most part. It's just but dotted line connections. Here's what I want to say first and foremost about Christian Bale's Batman in this movie. That is a very satisfying shade of black.
Yes.
I don't know who the color coordinator was in the costume design department that landed on this shade of black. I don't know what it is. That is the most satisfying to look at shade of black when he is painting that suit. And then the best shot of it, I really think you get, is when he first runs into Katie Holmes when she gets attacked on the train station.
Yeah.
The way the cape is sitting and the way the light is sitting, and you can see the definition in the suit. It's just the perfect shade of black, man. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
This is such a good bat suit. It's a very, very good bat suit.
Which we will or have already dived into, depending on when this episode releases. Wait.
No, we will be. Not yet.
Oh yeah, that's right. We will be, because this is at the end of September.
If you guys didn't see our Twitter post, we have a bunch of special episodes lined up for the month of October, leading up to our breakdown of the Dark Knight. The first of which will be about the evolution of the bat suit. Trust me, we are going to talk about this bat suit in detail in that episode. We are going to talk about it here too. Don't worry. Him
it's
building
great.
it's him building the bat suit in this movie might be my favorite part of the movie. I it's a toss up between that and him training at the temple. Because all the stuff that's pre him going back to Gotham, all the origin story stuff is flawless.
Correct.
It's even and I made a point of writing this down. It's even edited well because you could have told that story linearly. And I'm sure there's somebody out there on the internet who's for like an editing project re-edited that movie in chronological order. And I kind of would like to see that if somebody has done that. I might even do it myself if I get bored one day. And I think editing it flashback style the way they did is because it gives them opportunities to have little pockets of action throughout the actual story.
Yes.
And since the second half of the movie is so action heavy, it keeps the tone consistent from beginning to end. Otherwise, you wind up with a movie that like where like the first third is all story and you don't see someone throw a punch for like half an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it would make the movie feel uneven, like you were watching like disjointed movies cut together. So editing so telling the first half of the movie origin flashback style keeps the tone consistent and it keeps my attention. And it's just kind of cool to see how the stuff in the past plays out with the stuff in the future. You get the setup and you get the payoff a lot quicker. So
Yes.
there's no time to forget it and it lets it live in your head a little bit more.
But my one thing about that entire situation is, do you think in the chronological edit his mom says something?
She ain't got a line of dialogue. I think you can barely make out her saying something to when he breaks his arm, and I think you can barely hear him saying, "Oh no!" When they come out of the theater, she says, "What's wrong, Bruce?" I'm like, "That's it." We get no relationship with it. And like, I know everyone likes to make fun of the Martha scene in BVS, but at least he loved his mom. At least it's just. But she and that mom had no dialogue. But at least the dad got to say Martha. Yeah, the mom there, which makes. No, I'm not going to say it because I don't want to go to another movie. But no, it is a bummer that we don't get to see his relationship with both of his parents. That it's just him and his dad.
It's
Uh,
a. I mean, I know why. Like, you really like, to be archaic, to be whatever. Like, the lessons he's learning, the things he's becoming, are because of the legacy of his father and his name, which come from the male side. But
which
yes, it
is
would be nice to have seen her do anything.
and that's honestly a lot of people need like that's pretty traditional Batman. Like
Yes.
like that's kind of always been like and that's also just kind of old school storytelling in general. It's like, the son takes on the lessons of the father. I get that too. It's one of those like like in the ongoing comic book origins of Batman for decades, it's always been like the story where the character of Batman was conceived through something that his father did when he was younger,
Yeah.
which is a really funny thing they did in Brave and the Bold, which I thought was a great way to do it. But like Batman's connection to his father has always been the thing that's driven him
Yes.
the most. That's why in the Flashpoint comics and in the animated movie, Flash brings back a letter from Bruce's dad. The implication has never been that him and his mother had no relationship. It's just his relationship with his father has always been the one that's been explored more, whereas Superman has always been more the relationship with his mother has been the one that's been explored more. So
Yes.
I get why Christopher Nolan would choose to do that for this story. As someone like him, who again is not necessarily a comic book sweaty, if he's going over Cliff Notes, surface level intro to Batman 101 stuff, he's getting all the connection to the dad stuff. So it would make sense why that was the I don't want to say safest placed way to build that relationship, but it is the one that kind of makes the most sense if it's kind of your first foray into comic book filmmaking,
Well, and I
especially in
think,
2005.
yeah. Well, and I also think too is, given the nature of we're coming in and out of moments, those are the
Yeah.
moments that are defining. There is probably stuff of her that's on the cutting room floor that just look. As much as this movie is amazing, it's a very good movie. I don't feel like I'm clocking till we see Batman, but it is called Batman Begins. He's got to be Batman. We don't need another 15 minutes of seeing him and his mom do things. So
Yeah. I
totally makes sense.
I feel like in a different filmmaker's hands, we would have done that in a different movie.
Or if it was a
But
show,
or if it was a show, if we were building out a greater cinematic universe. This is a three-part story that we're focusing. I mean, this trilogy strips Batman down to kind of the bare essentials,
yeah,
because they take away a lot of all the fantastical stuff.
correct.
So when you remove all the fantastical elements of Batman, you remove anything to do with magic, superpowers, otherworldly, where it's everything grounded in reality. When you break Batman down to his bare essentials, this is it. Like, it doesn't get any more stripped down version of Batman than this.
Correct. And which I think was the better way to go because you're
Yeah.
trying to make Batman the thing. Because, look, the last Batman Forever, he's leaning toward almost being lost behind his villains. Batman and Robin, he's definitely backseated with his villains
Yeah.
because who knows why. Other reasons we won't get into. Go
Yeah.
listen to our episode about Batman and Robin to find out why.
Ooh, we have some things to say.
But I think here is like the intention is this is a Batman movie. This is a Batman Begins. This is an origin movie,
Yeah.
and we've got to go through this and get the story beats, get the things we need, give him his background, and have him be this character we saw in Batman Year One, the comic, or things we've never seen in films before, which is his actual origin.
Yeah.
Every single film before this, you see the tragedy, but you don't see the origin.
Yeah, you don't see you see point A, and then you skip ahead to point
Yeah.
L.
Yeah.
You miss all the other ones. There's a
Yeah.
lot of ground to cover for how he goes from being that to being Batman.
Yeah.
And so I know people like to talk about like we don't need to see the origin again, but I don't know. There is something about, and maybe it's just because I'm a big Batman nerd, but like there's something about seeing his different interpretations of his origin that is very satisfying. And I've said it before and I'm gonna say it again. There is nothing more satisfying than him putting his suit together for the first time.
Yeah.
That chunk of minutes where it's Christian Bale and Michael Caine building the arsenal,
And the
is,
occasional going back to Lucius Fox.
and it's occasionally it loses any more stuff. That is I can watch that whole sequence on a loop. It's so good. It's so very very good. And it's just and there because and as a guy like I play D&D, I love D&D crafting. I love building building cool stuff. So as someone who's like, man, if I had the opportunity to sit down at a workbench with some tools and some gear and just custom build a bat suit, I wouldn't be able to contain my giddiness. I would be giggling like a 4-year-old. Like I would be I would be having tell me that there was no point during shooting. That's why all the shots of him doing that are from over his shoulder from behind. They can't look on his face because Christian Bale's probably just like, this is so cool.
Yeah. I'm Batman. This is great. I don't know
Oh,
what else.
I'm building the utility belt. Like, come on. You can't cast a fan. You can't cast a fan to play Batman. You can't do it. That's why you always hear the stories about Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor making the lightsaber sounds with their mouths when they would be shooting the
Yep.
fights. I wanna shift to a side character real quick.
Okay.
Can we talk about Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow?
No. So Liam Neeson.
Aw.
I'm just kidding. No, I think he is
Dude,
an unsung hero of this movie because
he is so good in this movie. Cillian Murphy doesn't know how to make a movie without chewing on every piece of scenery. Just he is so good in this movie. He's so charming and captivating on screen. I am locked in every time Dr. Crane walks on.
I think what he does a really good job of is had like for the first part of the movie, you're like, oh, he's the villain. And then you get to a point where you're like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
wait, he's not the villain. He's a stooge. So when
Because you're like, Ra's al Ghul's dead, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, no, we did that. Ra's al Ghul's dead. We
yeah,
saved Liam Neeson. We're not doing superpowers. Scarecrow's the villain.
yeah.
Because that would make, because Scarecrow's more of a Batman villain than Ra's al Ghul. It's one people are gonna know more.
Yeah. So the fact that when Ra's al Ghul, one of the first lines he says is like basically like, "Nah, we just lied to him so he would do the things he wanted."
Yeah.
like,
And
this
he's like,
guy's
oh, so
been nobody.
so Crane's not a member of the league? God, no.
Yeah, yeah, no,
It was one of those, like, I kept waiting for everybody to start. I kept waiting for all the other ninjas to start laughing. Like, that fucking guy?
yeah, like
The nerd?
no, we didn't want to deal with FedEx, so we got this guy. It's fine.
Dude, Cillian Murphy, and I wrote this in my notes. Cillian Murphy has such big dick energy in this movie. he, you know what Cillian Murphy is really good at? He is really good at being a condescending prick.
Yes.
You can taste the condescension in the air when he speaks. You can tell that he's like, I know for a fact I am smarter than you, and therefore I am better than you in every single way. He is so menacing and just twisted. And I hate that this is the most we get of him in this trilogy.
Kind of, yeah, but I also like that, like, the moment Batman gets physical in front of him, when they're
Mhm.
in the mains and they're when he finally when he finally sees Batman like literally mow through his men, and
Yeah.
suddenly like, oh, this dude's here. like because he
Oh
lights him on
man.
fire, like he gets him, lights
Yeah.
him on fire, and then he runs away. So he's like, aha. But then once he takes out the dudes, you just had that moment. He's just like, oh, Dr. Crane's not here right now.
It
Like,
was because like if you think back to like like the animated series, that's exactly what Scarecrow was like. It was scare, 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 run away, and then the moment Batman would get him in an arm lock or something, he'd crumble. He'd turn into his. That's that. I love Scarecrow is one of my favorite Batman villains. I mean, we've talked about it in the early episodes of this show, and Cillian Murphy. I don't know what comics he read to get ready for this, if any. He understood the assignment, man.
yeah, my only thing I wish is I wish there was a single moment between him and Liam Neeson.
Yeah, I know. I was kind
But
of hoping to see him, but I also understand why there wouldn't be because of the
yeah.
way Ra's al Ghul operates. I also just wish he had played a bigger part in the finale. Um, I
Well, that's what I said
and
is he's a stooge. So I think it
he's
makes total sense of like, no, he has nothing to do with this. He's
so
just a pawn.
the reason I say that is because this is kind of goes to my point from earlier of like if I was to take another pass at the story of this trilogy, it would be to have this be the origin for Scarecrow being the final big bad in the third movie.
Yeah, that kind of makes
That
sense.
would be my thing. Like if you wanted to just take this to like because he only shows up for that first sequence in the Dark Knight, and then we don't see him again until a cameo in the Dark Knight Rises, and I'm like what if like that scene in the Dark Knight was just him slowly building up his regime underground, and like let's have him escape that scene in the Dark Knight, and then have the third movie like he's been building all this up and just goes what he did to the Narrow, because the Dark Knight Rises is a spiritual sequel to the Batman Begins. Have it be the Batman Begins times 10, where what Scarecrow and all them do to the Narrows in this movie with the fear toxin in the water, do that to the rest of just Gotham or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think there was a lot of opportunities in this movie to set up for a Scarecrow big bad villain reveal in the third movie ultimately. Now we don't go there, but I think that's one of the things that lends itself to how good of a writer Christopher Nolan is I think he wrote in all these opportunities for expansion without realizing it. I
Yeah.
don't think it was on purpose. I think a lot of things in this movie are written on purpose, and I think a lot of good things in this movie were written by accident.
No, I agree. This is definitely like, I don't know if he really knew he was doing a sequel when he made this movie, or that it would be successful enough for him to do a sequel.
This one probably not.
But it had to stand on its own, and it stands on its own perfectly.
Because of the three, this is the one that feels most like a DC movie.
Yeah.
You could take this movie alone and tie it in with another DC universe probably pretty easily.
Yeah.
Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises not even close.
No, not at all. So
All
we
right,
talked
where are
about
we going next?
Killian. We still have yet to talk about our star. Do we want to go to the little people, then go to the star? Do we want to get into the actual movie? How you want to do this?
Man, it's hard with this movie because there's so much good to talk about. There's every time I want to talk about so many things with this movie. I took us to Cillian Murphy. You take us where we're going next.
All right, I'm going to take you to Liam Neeson, and this is
Okay,
why I'm going to take you to Liam Neeson, because that dude got me. Because
bro.
here's what happened. Here's what happened. Okay, again, big comic book fan. I've been reading
Yeah.
comics for a long time. In the origin of Batman, there's a character named Ducard. And when Bruce Wayne is young,
There is?
there is. He's a teen. When Bruce Wayne is a teenager, when you go to like pre-crisis origins, young Bruce Wayne travels everywhere. And he goes to Europe, to France, to train with this guy Ducard, who is an amazing detective. And that's where he learns how to be a detective, is from this man Ducard.
Shut the front door.
Totally 1000, because this is
I
the one.
never knew that.
So this is where it gets me.
I'm embarrassed that I didn't know that.
It's pre-crisis, bro. I don't even think you were born yet.
89. It was April of 89. I was 3 months old.
Yeah. So then what happens is this. I 1000% buy into the fact he's Ducard.
Yeah.
I always see things coming in
Yeah.
every movie. I always see things coming. I'm very rarely surprised. So when he comes out as Ra's al Ghul, I lost it. I was like, you sons of bitches, you got me with my fandom. I was so dialed in that somebody actually knew who Ducard was and cast the great Liam Neeson as Ducard. I didn't see at all he was actually Ra's al Ghul.
Well, because especially at this point, you understand how dialed into reality this movie is. So you're like, oh, well then, yeah. So they're not going to do immortal Ra's al Ghul. He's just dead.
Yeah.
Like we're just, yeah. I mean, but also if I'm casting Ra's al Ghul, if I got to choose between Liam Neeson and Ken Watanabe, I'm picking Ken.
Yeah, because I remember going like, Asian, sure, why not? So
well, yeah, oh yeah, that's kind of the great thing about Ra's al Ghul is that the character is so racially ambiguous. You can cast whoever you want. Look at everyone who's played him in live action. We've had Liam Neeson, who's an Irishman. We've had Alexander Siddig, who is, I don't want to say because I'm going to be wrong, but he's just not
Middle
white.
Eastern.
Middle Eastern some kind. You've got, and I don't know the actor's name who played him in the Arrowverse, but who is Greek. Like we've had, and then you look at everyone who's voiced him. It's like you can cast whoever the hell you want to play a Ra's al Ghul or Ra's al Ghul. So yeah, at that point you're like, yeah, Ra's al Ghul's dead.
And his casting's meta because even Liam Neeson read the script, got to the point where he disappears, and he calls Christopher Nolan and David Goyer and says, I don't want to do this. I've literally just did this in Kingdom of Heaven. I'm always the mentor. I don't want to do this. And they go, no. Finish the script. Finish the script. And he finishes the script and he goes, oh, I'm in. I never get to be the villain. So
he doesn't.
So that's where, like I said, like it totally. And then every time I've watched it since then, I'm like, how did I not see it? It's so freaking obvious, but it's because of my fandom, because I really thought he would be a great Ducard.
Here's the thing though, having just watched it in the last couple of weeks here, knowing now that he's actually Ra's al Ghul, when I watched those training scenes, I'd never pick up any. I'm like, I'm looking for tells. I'm looking for giveaways.
I'm rubbing my chin.
Other than the goatee. Other than the goatee, I'm looking for giveaways. I'm looking for tells. There's none.
The revenge story is the tell.
I don't think so.
Only because I know the comic.
It's only the tell because of The Dark Knight Rises and because of the comic. Going into the movie on its own, though, there's no point where he drops his guard in the movie.
I guess that's true.
Like, because you get to the part where it's Bruce's final test, where they want him to execute the guy.
Yeah.
Like, and then once Bruce starts fighting back and trying to escape, they still never drop. Like, at that point, you think the decoy would have been like, boss, what do I do?
Yeah.
You know? But no, everyone, including Descartes, still can, quote unquote Descartes, continue to follow fake Raish's lead as it all the way until the end. So it's like, no, they went out of their way to not drop the facade. Probably more likely than not for the sole purpose of convincing people like you
Well,
that it was what it was.
and I go to the fact that, like, I bet you 100% until the decoy is killed, I bet you everybody there thought he was the real Ra's al Ghul. And it's
Who's
not
to say?
until,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not until he died that Ra's al Ghul's like, okay, look, this is what I've been doing. It's actually me,
Well,
and they
and
follow him.
this brings up a point that I actually wrote down, like, first when I was because I think, because even watching the movie even all the way to the end, there's one line that throws this off, but not entirely, which is, was Liam Neeson really Ra's al Ghul the whole time? Or is Ra's al Ghul a title, quote unquote, that he was next in line for, that he has now inherited because Ken Watanabe was that's how, quote, it's like the Dread Pirate Roberts, basically.
No, I think it's the latter, or his.
You think that you think that he was Ra's the whole time?
I think he's Ra's the whole time.
Okay.
I think it's always been him, and I think it's or his method supernatural or cheap parlor chicks.
Which is I love that line of dialogue, by the way. I love that little Easter egg of the comic origins of Ra's al Ghul. I don't know. I think if Christopher Nolan were to come out today and say he meant it to be that it was a Dread Pirate Roberts situation, I think you could be like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I buy that. But I am operating under the assumption that he was always Ra's. It's just always an idea I've had in the back of my head of like, but was he?
My thing is this: I think he's always been Ra's because Ken Watanabe says not a single thing until Bruce Wayne backs away.
Well, he speaks, but he speaks in Japanese.
Well, I meant to Bruce. Like, he doesn't ever address Bruce like through the whole process. So I think that's where, like, no, this is the game. This is the setup. This person who's over here that we're trying to impress by training you, when in actuality, I'm training you to be my lieutenant.
It also speaks volumes that when Bruce refuses to execute the guy, that Liam Neeson begs. Like, Bruce, please, for your own sake, do this. It's like he's Ra's al Ghul is begging someone for their own life.
Well, and it's like
that lends itself to like that line he has later in the movie where he's like, "You were my greatest student." It's like that really lends itself to like that comic book origin of Ra's al Ghul sees Batman as his one true successor.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is a missed opportunity in The Dark Knight Rises, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
We don't. I hope we don't get to that. I don't want to talk about the movie.
We're gonna.
I know. But no, I think that has always been my whole thing with this movie. Is like, this movie got me because I was so invested in the comic book of Descartes.
That's so wild. I never knew that. And that honestly, I want to go back and watch this again, knowing that, because that gives me such a whole newfound appreciation. Maybe Christopher Nolan was a comic book nerd. I don't know, man.
Well, remember,
everything I've ever heard and read suggests that he's not.
Yes, so. But he co-wrote this script with David Goyer, who is a deep
David
nerd.
Goyer loves his comic books. You are 100% correct, and shame on me for not acknowledging that at the beginning.
Yeah. So we'll go real quick through some of the other casts before we get back to Christian Bale. Rutger Hauer, amazing,
great.
Again, understood the assignment, did what he's supposed to do.
Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox is now the gold standard by which I will, because I mean, literally every time Lucius Fox has been depicted since this movie, it's always been someone doing a Morgan Freeman impression.
Yeah.
Whether it was Gotham, whether it was the TV shows, anyone doing a Lucius Fox since Morgan Freeman has tried to do Morgan Freeman.
And my favorite part is that whole like you expecting to run into a lot of gunfire in these caves.
Their whole dynamic, his whole dynamic with Lucius in all three of these movies is excellent.
Yeah.
It's every, I mean, it gives me so much joy when you know, he's showing him the tumbler and he's like, look, Mr. Wayne, as far as I'm concerned, all this stuff's yours. Just don't treat me like an idiot. Like I can keep a secret. I honestly don't care.
Yeah.
Just just don't be a dick. Don't
At,
be a dick about it.
at what point do you think he realizes he's Batman?
First time Batman is in the news. The first time the first time public catches wind of Batman, he immediately knew.
I think that's my thought process. It's like there's no way he doesn't know. He
There's
doesn't.
no way he doesn't know. The moment he knows Batman exists, he knows Bruce Wayne is Batman.
Yeah.
Because to quote the lawyer from The Dark Knight, are you gonna tell me you didn't recognize your baby out there pancaking police cars?
Yeah, that's always the telltale. Like even if he didn't know
Yeah.
before, at that point you're like, no. But that's
Yeah, once you see,
after.
yeah, if up to the tumbler he hadn't noticed, the moment he sees the tumbler, he's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Morgan Freeman in this movie, in all three of these movies, but especially in this one, is just the sprinkles on top of the hot fudge sundae.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very good. Can we spend a couple minutes talking about Michael Caine as Alfred?
He was next.
Man, now, and I have said this on numerous episodes of this show. We've never had a bad Alfred casting.
No.
Find me one that don't exist.
There's not.
Michael Caine might be my favorite though.
I think Michael Caine is the last version, in my opinion, of the doddering. Not doddering may not be the right word. The old man who's taking care of this boy instead of
Surrogate father.
the mentor who's raising Batman. Because I
Yeah.
think like Jeremy Irons, even though there probably is a giant age difference between him and Ben Affleck, it doesn't look like it. What's his name?
It's because of the version. It's because of the version. Well, but that's the way it is in the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns comic book too. At that point, Bruce is so old that he and Alfred are basically, you know, peers.
And Jeremy Irons doesn't age.
Jeremy Irons has also looked at the same age for the last 40 years.
Yeah. But then even with like Gollum in the Batman, like he's older, but he's not this old guy with a cane. And I think Michael
and Robert Pattinson looks younger than he is.
Yeah. So I think Michael Caine to me is the first of like, I don't want to say grandfather age, but he's older than Bruce Wayne's dad was. And
well, and coming off of Michael Goff for 4 Batman movies, who, say what you will about all 4 movies, Michael Goff was always amazing. It's an easier, when you think about like Aunt May and Spider-Man, you know, we went from, and I don't know the actress's name, but from the Raimi films, who was much older.
Yeah.
And then you get into the Andrew Garfield films where you have Sally
Field.
Thank you, Sally Field, who's older but not as old as previous Aunt May.
Not a grandma Aunt May, an actual Aunt May.
which has always bothered me about Aunt May. I'm like, why is she always 90? She's his aunt. And then you get into the Tom Holland ones where it's Marissa Tomei. With Alfred, he's just permanently old. We never really know how old Alfred is. It's just that all times he must always on screen be depicted as old. Because from the origin story of this movie to the time this movie ends, his appearance doesn't change even the slightest. But that Michael Caine has also kind of looked the same his entire life.
Well, but I also get into like in the comics, it's not until like the mid 90s you start getting more into Alfred is somebody who's actually capable. Like before Alfred
is not to be trifled with.
Yeah, before that he was just a butler, but then as like Frank Miller starts introducing that thing that he possibly had a military background, and this is definitely in The Dark Knight when we get there, where he talks about his own experiences. We get little bits of that. So I think him in this, he's perfectly cast for that. He's old enough to be the old butler. But when you get into the other films, he's young enough that you could buy that. And he's a big dude anyway, that he may have ran around and did some military mercenary work, because he doesn't say he was a secret agent. He said, me and my friends.
we're working with the local government. Yeah. They
mercenaries.
They were mercenaries. But even going past that, Christian Bale and Katie Holmes might not have, or Maggie Gyllenhaal might not have a lot of chemistry in The Dark Knight. But you know who has the most on-screen chemistry through all three movies? It's
How?
Christian Bale and Michael Caine.
Oh yeah.
I love their interactions so much. Michael Caine does for Alfred in this movie what I think Heath Ledger did for the Joker in The Dark Knight, which was what Mark Hamill has done for the Joker in animated form, even is a better example. Which is when you think about the Joker is like four different parts of the same character. He's chaos, he's a lunatic, he's a criminal, he's all these things. And Mark Hamill's Joker kind of encapsulates all different versions of that. Heath Ledger's got the second closest. His was more of the anarchist than anything else. Alfred is equal parts father figure, mentor, you know, I hate to say assistant, but assistant, guy in the chair, just kind of the catch-all person, teaching you how to fight, teaching you how to survive kind of thing. And I think Michael Caine gets the closest to being all of those at once, because you can believe, like you said, you can believe his past as a mercenary that is implied. You can believe that he knows how to stitch up a wound. You can also believe he knows how to properly cook a filet mignon.
Yes.
And I'm sure it would be the greatest steak I've ever had in my life. I just imagine that this Alfred is truly a wizard in the kitchen.
Yeah. 5 and 5, salt and pepper. Somehow it's amazing.
Yeah, I just man, this is my favorite portrayal of Alfred in any Batman anything. This will always be my favorite. As much, and that's not to say that I don't love all the other ones, because I do, but so far, like, this has been my favorite by far, and I really can't wait to see more of what Andy Serkis does with Robert Pattinson. But there is just something about the scenes with Michael Caine and Christian Bale in this movie, whether it's them on the plane coming back, because they can go from having serious conversations about justice to about his feelings about his parents to cracking jokes about the fact that Alfred technically owns everything at this point.
Yeah.
Which is one of those, is just like, where he's like, yeah, I trust you're gonna put on conceal your identity to protect those you care about. Oh, you mean Rachel? No, I mean me. It's like, I'm gonna need all right, well, thank God I left everything to you. Yep, you can borrow the car if you want, bring it back with a full tank of gas. I love, for a brief moment, Alfred can just be a dad. And it just, I love it, man. I love Michael Caine as Alfred.
The next one I want to bring up is my favorite thing that happened in this movie, as far as characters, is giving me an extremely capable Commissioner or Captain Lieutenant Gordon, whatever he is.
Jim Gordon.
Jim Gordon.
He's a sergeant at the beginning of this movie.
So Gary,
that's we get to see the progression of his career.
Yeah,
which is insane to me.
Gary Oldman finally getting to be a good guy,
and not just a good guy, but like the goodest good guy,
is awesome.
His Gordon is so good.
Like, he's one of those actors. Like he's the J.K. Simmons of the DC. Just I don't care. But
which is hilarious, because J.K. Simmons plays Gordon in the Snyderverse, which I think is something we were robbed of, honestly.
Probably, but anyway.
I think we were robbed of that.
But no, he's one of those guys. I would love for him to forever be Gordon. It's just no offense to Jeffrey Wright.
No, Jeffrey Wright's so good.
But to have
and look, Pat Hingle did what he was supposed to do.
Yeah, and that harkens to the previous versions of those characters, But no, I think he's a man of action. He's an intelligent man. He's a good man. He's got everything that you want this Gordon to actually be. Because again, the whole thing of Gordon being capable is a thing that comes from Frank Miller. Before Frank Miller,
straight out of year one. This is year one's Gordon.
Yes,
like page to screen. This is year one's Gordon. The look, the writing, everything about it is year one's Gordon. He is just a cop in a town that has grown so filthy and dirty inside and out, and he is just trying to survive one day to the next and figure out what to do.
Yes. So I really liked him in this. I really feel like I loved that we got a capable Gordon because I was so tired from the first Batman movie of
Yeah.
Gordon just being explanatory nonsense. Like, and he's great when he talks to Batman, and like, yeah,
It's
it's awesome.
awesome. It's
Um,
I love them just surrounded by flying bats, just trying to figure out like just what to do next.
yeah,
It's if you've never seen the blooper reels from any of those scenes, you need to see it because Gary Oldman fucks up so much, and it's hilarious every single time. Um, and if you ever get a chance, guys, it's fantastic. Look it up. Gary Oldman is the greatest actor living right now. I will die on that hill. Gary Oldman is such a good actor that there's a pretty good chance one of us is Gary Oldman and we don't realize it.
correct.
Um, I fully anticipate one day to be walking around my house, minding my own business, doing the dishes, and somebody will say cut, and I will look over, and I'm on a movie set, and I'm Gary Oldman, and that's how good of an actor Gary Oldman is.
Yes.
Um, Using him as our avatar into Jim Gordon for these movies, and in this one especially, and just how fleshed out of a character he is by the end of The Dark Knight Rises. I mean, he's almost our other lead, like
Yeah.
our other central character. Like it really is 50-50 him and Batman in all of these movies.
Yeah.
And I love that because we had never seen that before in a movie, and we won't see it again until the Batman.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite things in Batman storytelling. It's one of the things that makes the Long Halloween so good is the relationship between him and Gordon and Harvey Dent, which we get allusions to in The Dark Knight. But just in any comic, the work between Gordon, the relationship between Gordon and Batman is so central that it's one of my favorite running jokes on the Harley Quinn animated series is because that Batman doesn't care about Gordon and Gordon's obsessed with Batman, and it makes me laugh every single time. Because Gordon just wants Batman to love him and admit that they're friends. Okay. Uh,
Yes. Yes.
I love it. It makes me laugh.
All right. So here's the next person I want to talk about before we
Oh man, we're running out of people. What do we
run
got left?
run to back to Christian Bale because we have yet to
Yeah,
talk about him yet.
I know.
Linus Roach as Thomas Wayne.
Oh,
I
good pick.
think gives he was when I did the top 10 dads in film, I picked
Yeah.
him as like number 3.
He's very good, Thomas Wayne.
Well, and I think too is like what I like about what they usually like Jeffrey Dean Morgan as brute as Thomas Wayne is the brute, super big, muscular Thomas Wayne, which
Jeffrey Dean Morgan is the Thomas Wayne I can see being Batman in an
correct.
alternate universe. If you told me Linus Roach was Batman in another universe, I'd tell you were high on the wrong
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, because what I like about it is to me, watching him play Thomas Wayne, you see who Bruce Wayne would have been. He would
Yes,
not have been this
100%.
overly violent, intense, obsessed, let's look, he's crazy person. He would have been this very gentle, very loving, very fatherly, um, what is it, philanthropist? Is that what that word is?
Yes.
Like
Yes, philanthropist.
you see this what this legacy that Alfred has been talking about and why it's so important. And even though they're both trying to help Gotham, they're doing it in two completely different ways. And I love that this is the version that we got of Thomas Wayne. Because like I said, I think making Thomas Wayne a capable person physically,
Mm,
I think is a mistake. Him just being this doctor who is not
yeah.
physically capable, who is just this normal dude who's just this
Yeah.
really intelligent and really thoughtful and really smart and really has a good heart, I think is what you really need because I think that adds to the tragedy of how this boy becomes Batman.
I agree and disagree. I think on the surface level, I think you're 100% correct. Because as humans, when we see someone like Linus Roach's Thomas Wayne get gunned down, kind of there's this smaller guy, a very non-imposing guy, we tend to feel bad for it more as opposed to like a bigger guy. Where I think it where I disagree is because I look at it from the perspective of it's 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 the Worf problem that Star Trek: The Next Generation had. people always make jokes about the fact that in Star Trek: The Next Generation, Lieutenant Worf gets his ass kicked quite frequently.
Yes.
Um, the reason behind, like, the barrels is my favorite
Yeah.
one, because the barrels is ridiculous. The reason they would have Worf get his ass kicked, though, is because he's a Klingon warrior.
Yeah.
He's kind of the best fighter in the room. So in order to make something threatening, you have to have something that can kick the tough guy's ass so that it feels like a threat.
Correct. But the problem they did is they never established he could do anything
That's
first.
that's my point, is to, like having Jeffrey Dean Morgan, having the comedian and Negan from The Walking Dead be Thomas Wayne works from the Worf perspective, but only if we're gonna get to experience not justice, Flashpoint, or him, but it's because they were trying to avoid retelling the origin story again. I get it. So I get both sides of it, is what I'm, but needless to say, Linus Roach's take on Thomas Wayne, if you're going for if you're going for a film series where the focus is on Bruce's relationship with his father, you nailed it.
Yeah.
Because I think Linus Roach is a very underrated actor. I actually quite enjoyed him on Law and Order for the brief time that he got to be on there as one of the prosecutors. I thought he was very good, and I really enjoyed uh, his chemistry with the actor playing young Bruce Wayne. They
Yes.
felt like father and son to me.
Yes.
I loved the conversation with him and Bruce in, when he has the nightmare about the bats. I love the way that everything as I said before, everything pre-Return to Gotham, I think is flawless in this movie, and that very much includes the stuff. Yeah, I wish there was. I do kind of wish, from a writing standpoint, they had found a way to work in his relationship with his mother into this as well. But as far as the execution of his relationship with his father, I don't think they could have done a better job.
1000%. All right.
All right, yeah, take a pause.
Dude, we're over an hour and we have yet to talk about the movie.
Keep in mind, we had 20 minutes at the top where we didn't talk about the movie. But also, who gives a shit?
Well, I was just going to say, do you want to make it a two-parter?
No. Dude, these are always long. I
Yeah.
always let these ones go on because they're a special episode. They're always going long. It's
Okay.
fine.
I just didn't know if you wanted to
No. It's
do
fine.
two 1-hour ones.
No. These are. I have always let these ones just be as long as they're going to be, because they're something special we're doing.
Okay.
It's once a month. It's a breakdown. We're here to go deep dive in depth. That's the point. Batman and Robin is terrible. We only spent 20 minutes on it because fuck that movie. But there's not much more to say other than it sucks ass. That being said, I do want us to eventually get to an end, because I do have to get back to work. So
Yeah, same. Okay. All right. So then now,
so let's do. So we got to do Christian Bale,
and then the movie.
and then the movie in general.
Yeah,
and
because
then
we've covered pretty much everybody I feel we're going to cover.
I think we've hit all the important notes I wanted to make. The rest of them I'm going to save when we get into the other movies, because again, I kind of want to slowly pitch over these three movies. Like, there was a way to do this as a universe building, just the way that it is.
Well, and my biggest problem, and we can get to the third one, but I'll tell you right now, I really believe two things happened that messed up everything. Number one is
Heath Ledger died.
not so much Heath Ledger died. I don't think he was planning on doing another one. My understanding was that it was supposed to be Two-Face and Heath Ledger as the villains in the second one going against each other. And that when he found that somehow in the process they decide not to do that, which is why all the Two-Face stuff is truncated really quickly at the end of the Dark Knight. That is my understanding.
See, my understanding was that this was that the third movie was going to be
The Trial of the Joker.
Two-Face, Hugo Strange, and the Trial of the Joker.
See, my understanding was the Trial of the Joker and Two-Face was going to be his origin, and then it got.
Oh, see, no, my understanding from reading up on it over the years was that they were going to tell everyone that Harvey Dent died, but really they were going to lock up Two-Face and keep it a secret to protect his legacy.
It's possible, but my thing more is that even before they start making the third film,
Yeah.
DC announces they're going to reboot it. So I think that's part of why that
I don't
movie
think they
is.
had announced that yet, because
No, they did. They
at
did.
that point they had just announced Man of Steel,
No, they announced.
which Christopher Nolan was gonna be, um well, I think they announced they were launching a new universe, but I think the original intention was to loop in Christian Bale.
Nope. They specifically said. I only say that because
Let's
I was doing my other show at the time and I covered it.
Okay. Let's bookmark that,
Okay.
and we can work on that for the Dark Knight Rises
Yeah.
one.
I'm just telling you, I think that's why the
Okay.
third one is so not as anywhere near is I think.
I think it's a perfect storm of bad things happening that led to that movie. And I like that movie, but I think it's a perfect storm of
Well, I think
just
it's.
everything went wrong
Yeah.
prior to that movie getting made.
Well,
And
and I also think it's one of those. You want to make Interstellar, you better do this third one. You want to do this, you have
yeah,
to
but I'm
finish
telling you,
this.
man, he had already told him, he said he wasn't going to do the second one if he could without doing a third one. That was his deal was one or three.
It's possible. I don't know. I'm just saying. I think.
We'll worry about that when we get to
Yeah.
the Dark Knight Rises.
All right.
So
So we keep skirting around it. We started going down this route, and then we kind of went everywhere else. But Christian Bale.
man, it's hard to talk about this movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot to, because there's so much I love, man. Christian Bale,
Look, I will. I think
buddy.
he's one of the best actors of all time. It can be argued. I think he is most certainly the most talented and best actor to ever portray Batman ever. I think he can outact anybody who's ever put on the cowl. Now, does he in this role? In this, I think he gives his best performance of an actor in Batman Begins. I don't think he has anywhere near as much to do in The Dark Knight. And the third one we'll talk about later. But I think as far as talent, there are things he does in this movie nobody else ever pulls off. Now,
Mm,
on the flip, I don't think he does what I prefer best, which is why Val Kilmer is still kind of up there in my conversation of he is Bruce Wayne through
mhm.
and through, putting on a mask as Batman, putting on a mask as a Playboy. He is Bruce Wayne. It's very established. He is this version of Bruce Wayne is not the overly obsessed fighter of crime. He is a man who wants to save his city and uses Batman as a tool to do that,
Yeah.
which I think
He's
works in this storyline and makes sense within the three films and why that would make sense. Why in Dark Knight Rises there's a 6 year gap.
yeah,
But as a comic book person, like, no. But I think his performance is outstanding.
yeah.
There isn't even with Katie Holmes, you can see him like, no, girl, you're coming with me. I don't care if you have talent or not. I'm making this work. And just fantastic. As much as I love him as Batman, watching him go against Ducard, watching him with Alfred, watching him with just all with Lucius Fox, like it's so difficult to make a really interesting Bruce Wayne because everybody wants a Batman, and Christian Bale pulls it off so damn well.
Christian Bale, and you're absolutely right. Like, to make a compelling character of Bruce Wayne is hard, because yeah, at the end of the day, I want to see him in the suit.
Yeah,
You know, I love season one of Daredevil. I shouldn't have had to wait until the second half of the last episode to see the suit and for it to not be finished. That rude, the disrespect.
correct.
Uh, I felt lied to and misled. Um, so with this one, for them to make Bruce Wayne, but again, I think a lot of that lends itself to how well edited and written the first chunk of the movie is with the origin story. It's such a compelling, it's just a compelling story.
Yeah,
And this goes back to that earlier point of like breathing new life into the world of comic book movies pre MCU. This is the kind of thing we come to expect in our comic book movies now, where it's not the character in the suit that's interesting, it's the character that's interesting, and the suit's just cool. You know,
yes,
what makes Iron Man, what makes Tony Stark's Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark so compelling is his performance as Tony Stark, not just the Iron Man suit. The Iron Man suit's cool, but we love him because he's funny and he's got depth, and there's relatableness to his character.
yeah,
This was kind of the first, because this then leads us into the Dark Knight, and the same year the Iron Man comes out, Batman Begins was the first breath of that kind of writing in a comic book movie. And I think you're 100% right. I don't think the MCU happens without Batman Begins as the appetizer for what a comic book movie could be.
That you can get a comic movie that would pull in this much talent. Let's not forget. I think people forget the main villain of the first Iron Man movie is Jeff frickin' Bridges.
Yeah.
Again, another one of these almost the top actor of our time.
Yeah,
Like,
just the Lebowski in a really big Iron Man suit.
Yeah.
Like going against Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark in the first movie of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. What?
and stealing scenes left and right.
Yeah. And so when you bring in someone like Christian Bale to this movie, who just, we've said it several times about other, but who understood what he was supposed to do.
Yes.
He understood that he was playing three characters in this movie.
Yeah.
He understood that he was playing Playboy Bruce Wayne, Batman, and the actual person.
Yeah.
The Bruce Wayne to his core. He understood that was what we needed. And we had never seen that before. We had seen a little bit of it in 89's Batman, but not a lot. And then we didn't see it again. Then we see it in these three movies, and then we don't see it again until I think Robert Pattinson.
Yeah.
Just because of how Batman was used in the Snyderverse. So this was for a lot of the average moviegoer who were just going to see a fun Batman movie, who probably weren't anticipating that. And this was probably kind of like I said, this was their appetizer, their first tastes of what it's like to have a dynamic character in a comic book movie.
Oh yeah. I mean,
that doesn't happen without Christian Bale knowing what he's supposed to do with this.
Yeah. There's two moments in here that Christian Bale does as Bruce Wayne that are absolutely amazing, and one of them is heartbreaking, and it's when he runs into Rachel as he's leaving the restaurant, and he's like, hey, and like you could tell he's like, no, don't worry, like I'm gonna save the city, I'm Batman, everything's fine. And he's like, no, I'm doing stuff. And then the girls start calling to him, and you can see
we have more hotels for you to buy.
His face fall, like kind of, you see his eyes fall, busted, but you see his face trying to stay here, and you're just like, he wants to tell this person everything, but he can't.
That's your parents coming home after leaving you home alone at the house for the first time, and you being like, oh yeah, no, everything's fine, and then a shelf falls off the wall behind you. It's like, crap.
So that, and then the one is when he's talking to Raish at the party, and he's like, your quarrels with me. And he's like, you're welcome to explain it. And as he turns, he transitions into this drunk Bruce Wayne.
It's so good. Oh, it's so good. You can just barely see it on his face. It's the smile. Yeah. He just gets this. And I think I went back when I watched it a couple weeks ago. I think I went back and watched that like 2 or 3 times. I was like, I got to watch it again. It's so good. It's
because the fact that it's not a cut, he just turns around and starts going into it. You're just like, oh my gosh.
You know what that reminds me of, to give a modern example. It's in Moon Knight when Oscar Isaac is transitioning between the personas mid sentence, and you see just little muscle fluctuations and little changes in how he speaks, minus changing an entire different accent, but it's that kind of same thing. It's that switching of identities. Like he might as well have alternate, alters. He might as well have DID, because it's that much of a switch in again, literally mid turn. The camera doesn't cut. It's
the fact
wild,
that it
wild to me,
and that it entertains Raish.
Oh, that Raish thinks it's like the funniest thing ever. He's just like, you know what? Respect.
Yeah.
He's amusing. I know what he says is amusing, but the tone of his voice, just like, you know what? Didn't think you had it in you. Respect. Respect. Good for you. Good for you.
Well played, Bruce. Well played.
Well played, you son of a bitch. You son of a bitch, I'm in. Um, to go to that the what you do that defines you scene from the hotel. You know, the first time I saw this movie, I didn't love I remember being in theater. The first time I saw the movie, I didn't love that line. Watching it now but I was also 15. Watching it now as a grown ass man with some sense about him, I do find that that line is a lot deeper than I think it gets credit for, only
Yes.
because it's spoken by Katie Holmes. Um, because the line itself on paper, in the context of the scene, it's it's a really great, like, I'm trying to remember how I thought of what I thought about when I saw, like it's like an allusion to having a dual identity. Like, how do you know, like it's like her introducing the idea, the lesson that Bruce needs to learn in this movie, like of knowing which version of you is the real you. And ultimately it comes down to, like, because sometimes Bruce Wayne Batman gets a little lost in the sauce of and we see that in Batman Forever, actually.
Yeah.
Who am I? Am I Batman or am I Bruce Wayne, or can I be both? Is it possible? And so I think ultimately it's the idea of, it's what you do that defines you, that becomes kind of the defining thing for Batman, of like, who is this person? Is he Batman? Is he Bruce Wayne? Is he the playboy? No, he is the person that is doing the things he's doing.
Yeah. It's
So
almost
he doesn't need to worry about what to call himself. Um, it doesn't matter. What matters is what you're doing. Don't worry about the fact that you're out here making an ass of yourself at a swimming pool. You're also the one taking down Carmine Falcone.
yeah.
It plays into the whole thing that Liam Neeson says when he says, about having the will to act, when
Yeah.
he's giving him that lesson about his dad during his training. It's about having the will to do what's right, because it's right, and because because it's what's necessary. It's about doing what you need to do. And that is what those two quotes combined really kind of become the the motto, as it were, for what Batman stands for, at least in this take on Batman.
Yeah. And look, Christian Bale is a dancer. And I know it's a weird segue, but because he's
A
a
little bit.
dancer, he can mimic and learn martial arts very, very well. And I bring this up
Yeah.
because if you watch the behind the scenes stuff for Batman, they even the fight coordinators talk about like how fast he learned fight choreography
Hmm.
and how good he was at it, and that they had to put doubles in more of like, dude, no, you cannot do this.
Yeah.
We have to do this. You need to stop.
Well,
On
yeah.
top of that,
It's the Daniel Craig problem
yeah, but on
from
top
James
of
Bond.
that, Equilibrium, which is the movie he
Yeah.
did about 2 years before this, but the movie that when you watch it, you go like, oh yeah, Batman. But
I hate that movie.
okay,
We'll talk
so
about it later. We'll
yes,
talk about it
so
later. I hate that
so
movie.
but in the commentary, the director goes several times of things Christian Bale could do that nobody else was doing. And that in that
Yeah.
movie, the only thing he doesn't do is the flips. But that there's a what was it? Oh, it was two shotguns, a shotgun in each hand, and only Christian Bale could cock them without using. He would just do this like quick
Oh,
jerk move.
do the arm, the one arm,
Yeah, just like and it would.
the action move that
Yeah,
they do in video games. Yeah.
and he's like, only Christian
The
Bale could do it.
the coolest way to reload a gun.
Yeah, so it was just really cool to see. Like, no, this is a guy who's obsessed. And then on top of that, like, dude, I don't know if you know this about Christian Bale, but the movie he was making when he got cast as Batman was The Machinist.
Oh yeah, because he lost
He was down to
him.
121 pounds.
Yeah, he was gaunt. He was skin and bone. He basically had the Tobey Maguire problem, because Tobey Maguire, after the first Spider-Man, did Seabiscuit, and he lost a crap ton of weight to do Seabiscuit, to be a
Yeah.
scrawny little jockey. And then he had to put all that muscle weight back on for Spider-Man 2. He almost couldn't do it.
Yeah. No, they say from the stuff I watched, like Christian Bale's like, okay, get as big as possible, cool, and
Yeah.
like almost put on 100 pounds of mass, and then shows up on set, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, what did you do? He's like showed up looking like a bear, and they're like, we have to lean you out as quickly as possible. So that's why
Yeah.
if you watch some of the movies, like there's parts where he's just gigantic and he kind of leans out as the film goes on, but the dude like you said, he understands the assignment. He knows it's up. He's up with the fighting. He's up with that. They wouldn't let him drive the car, which is totally understandable. But
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. For insurance reasons, absolutely not.
yeah, but I mean,
What does he think he is, Tom Cruise?
yeah, yeah, yeah. He can't buy a new
Here's
safety guy.
here's the thing I want to say about Christian Bale too. Like when you look at like he does The Machinist before this, and then he does Batman Begins in The Dark Knight. I think it's that combination of roles that end up getting him the fighter, which is what gets him the Best Supporting Actor Oscar. Because if you haven't seen him in The Fighter, the movie's incredible. People at home, if you haven't seen The Fighter,
Yeah,
go see it for Christian. I mean, the movie is fantastic, but for nothing, if not for nothing, just for Christian Bale's performance. I mean, and when you watch that performance, you see elements of his take of Bruce Wayne and his take of the character from The Machinist. Here's the one thing I want to say about Christian Bale's Batman, though, and this is more of a me thing than it is a movie thing. His portrayal of all three versions of Bruce Wayne, whether it's Bruce Wayne the Playboy, Bruce Wayne, or Batman in this movie, are flawless. I hate his Playboy Bruce Wayne only because I hate American Psycho. And his Playboy Bruce Wayne is like too many shades of Patrick Bateman.
which I think is what makes it brilliant because that's the whole point.
It 100% is. I know that's why it works, but because I hate American Psycho so much, it's a little hard for me to swallow. And again, that is a me problem. That is not a problem with this movie. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that's a problem with the portrayal or the writing. That is strictly a me issue. But I just felt like I had to say it because I honestly just I never miss a chance to say how much I hate American Psycho, but also it was a problem for me watching the movie. There were a few times where like the Playboy scenes where I was like the scene in the hotel when he's talking to the people about Batman and the women and the girls swimming in the pool and all that. You could tell me that was a deleted scene from American Psycho, and
Yeah.
I would 1,000% believe you, right down to the haircut and the suit that he's wearing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Jaimin Hansu showing up in the pimp outfit at the end of Shazam 2, dressed like Papa Midnight. I mean, it's like, okay, I get what you're going for here, ha, but I hate American Psycho and I'm not enjoying myself right now.
Totally understandable.
That is my only hang up. Only hang up with that. All right, so I've brought up kind of my criticisms, issues that we've had with Katie Holmes, and the ones I had with, not even criticisms, just personal gripes with with Christian Bale. There are some things, that maybe didn't quite hit the mark for us as far as this movie goes. For the sake of being fair, Matt, what were some of the things as far as this movie that maybe just didn't quite land for you? I'm gonna let you go first.
I think my biggest problem with this movie may not be a surprise considering how much I like Batman Forever is like the system of martial arts they use in this movie to portray for them to use is very interesting. And I know that in the behind the scenes stuff, Christopher Nolan talks about how he feels like, once Rumble the Bronx comes, you get this like dance balletic martial arts thing. It goes over the top, and he wanted something dangerous and real. And I get that. But I also think they're edited so quickly, you don't get any of what is happening. And I don't know if it's because the Casey fighting method looks silly on film, or if, as much as I've talked about how awesome Christian Bale is, if he just couldn't move in the suit and it looks weird. I don't know. I just feel like there's so much we're missing with these really cool fights that I want to see because, like, Batman's supposed to be one of the best fighters of all time. I need to see what he's doing. And part of that glory would be to pull the camera back a little and not cut every 0.5 or 0.8 seconds while he's moving. And I think that is probably, besides Katie Holmes, my biggest gripe about the film is that I just don't think we see enough. You can know he's beating people up, but you can't see what he's doing. And I feel like that kind of is my big kind of like the Katie Holmes thing. I think I can kind of go like, well, this is where we are. But that's one of those things I'm like, this stuff looked cool. I don't know why you got rid of it.
I can tell you with almost 100% certainty that what I think is the reason why the fights are edited the way they are. Um,
Go.
it's the cape.
Oh,
It's the cape. It's the cape. Yeah, it's the cape. You got to realize nowadays when you watch a comic book movie, if a character has a cape, there's a pretty good chance that cape is CGI.
correct.
Christian Bale's cape is real. That cape, it's loose fabric. It doesn't cooperate with fast movement in a filming setting. So while the fighting may have been going really well, that cape is going to make all those shots look terrible. So you shoot close and edit close to hide the fact that this fighting style is going to look really dumb with a cape involved.
That's possible. My only pushback is this, and it's not diminishing what you're saying, but they even edit that way with the car chases. Like there's a lot of that car chase where I feel like we're jumping around way too much.
I think that dives into one of my negatives for the movie
Is the
that I
car.
don't.
You don't like the car.
We all know I don't like the tumbler. I think the tumbler is cool on its own. I think it's a bad Batmobile, and I understand that the thing that they have is practical and that they built a thing that looks like that drives around. I understand that. At no point is that vehicle going over 35 miles an hour.
I think that's incorrect, sir, but I
I
don't.
that vehicle is not going fast, and when it moves, it's not moving gracefully. It's not going to look great on camera. And so again, you edit it a certain way to make it look like it's moving faster than it, because they did the same thing in the 89 Batman movie. Because that Batmobile is also not going very fast. Um, that you edit like that to make it look like it's traveling farther faster than it actually is, and to hide the fact that they had to really coordinate those chase scenes to make up for the fact that the tumbler does not move gracefully.
Maybe. I only say maybe because the behind the scenes stuff, a lot of people say a lot of good things about the Tumblr. But at the
Oh
same
no,
time, I'm not on set, so I
the
can't.
fact that it worked is sorry, my phone just went off. Is speaks volumes to it. But that doesn't mean it was easy to shoot with. I mean, the fact that they just had it working is
Yeah,
a feat in and of itself.
that is correct. But no, I think that is kind of my, my only real gripe on this movie is I feel like a lot of the action, a lot of the editing in general, just feels like it's a little too much for what this film is. And it could be the cape thing because I mean, look, I've cosplayed Batman in the past, and I can remember at one point, like I was going to do a Batman fan film. Some guy had talked me into it. Luckily, it never happened because I think that would have been horrible, but not. Well, it doesn't matter. I already said it. It'd be horrible.
I well, I also think you alluded to it earlier when it was the suit was also not probably the easiest thing to move around in.
No.
As much as I love this design of the suit, it is not practical, hence the redesign that comes in the middle of the Dark Knight, which while that's not my preferred bat suit, you guys can hear us talk more about that in the bat suit episode and in the Dark Knight episode. It was practical for filming better action sequences because you can't film Batman fighting Bane the way you do in The Dark Knight Rises with the bat suit you use in Batman Begins.
Well, and you
It's
can't
too
look.
constrictive.
The reason I stopped being Batman is because the cowl sucks.
Yeah, it's
It
not an easy
sucks.
suit to fight in.
It, just in general, because the
And
thing of this is like,
this is a Batman with a ninja origin story, so you can't have him looking bad on camera as a fighter. He's fighting Ra's al Ghul. He's got to
yeah.
look good. So if you can't make it look good, you make it edited so it doesn't matter.
Well, and it's science. Look, your body naturally exudes heat, and when it can't,
Mine especially. Yeah.
it shoots it out of your head.
Yeah.
So now you've got your body can't exude heat, and you put a rubber condom on your head. You're
Yeah.
gonna die. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so
Not fun.
I get it, but I think that's my big thing. But I don't want it. I'll save the suits episode for my real run about suits. But I think that's where for me I think that's the biggest kind of complaint I have about this movie is some of the editing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, I think you're probably right. They're trying to hide things they don't want us to see, which is
There's
unfortunate.
and it's again, it's 2005. The superhero boom hasn't happened yet. This kicks off the superhero boom, but it hasn't happened yet. So the things that I think make The Dark Knight a better movie in terms of filmmaking don't happen unless they first make this movie and recognize, hey, with a bigger budget, we could do that better.
Yeah.
So while I noticed things like that in this movie, I also recognize that it was good enough. They were able to improve upon it for the next one.
Yeah.
Um, Partially by switching him to a much better vehicle, but that's for next month's episode. Yeah, no, if there's one thing I got to criticize other than it's just, yeah, I don't like the Tumbler. I don't think it works as a Batmobile. I think it's a really cool vehicle. I wrote down in my notes about the movie too, because they talk about, he's telling him how it's like the most advanced military vehicle, and one of the things it has that makes it advanced is GPS. And I'm like, yes, 2005, when when having onboard GPS was the height of tech. Man, if you had any kind of GPS in your car whatsoever, you were like everyone's. You were suddenly the one everybody wanted a ride with somewhere. You were driving on every road trip because you had the GPS. Remember those were the days, Matthew.
Oh,
Those were the
yeah.
days.
I remember there was a comic book that I was working on this storyline, and I was like, they should have a car like Kit. And then I realized, like, everything Kit did back in the 80s, you could do with your cell phone. So there's no reason for us to have a special car.
Exactly. And I don't want to bend the tumbler over a barrel here, because I did that in our Batmobile episode, which you guys can go back and listen to as well. I will say though, like, it's not my preferred Batmobile. However, when I think of the idea of what a Batmobile is, the one thing that the Tumbler does better than any of the others has ever done is making it high tech,
Yes.
because none of the others have ever really explored that a whole heck of a lot. Like the 89 Batmobile, which is my favorite, has the armor, which is neat. But other than that, it self drives. Other than that, like, he doesn't have like a bunch of gadgets or anything in there. It's not like a command center like we typically think of it as the Batmobile. Same with Kilmer's. We don't spend a lot of time in it. It drives up a wall,
Yeah.
which is a problem, but whatever. And we don't need to talk about Clooney's. But even Pattinson's, which I love, is it's a car with a jet engine on the back. And Affleck's, which I like, is just a smaller version of the Tumbler. It's a tank mixed with the Mach 5. So
Yeah.
this one's like a command center. It's got computers in there. You can see the screens and the buttons. Like, it can do things. And what I do appreciate about the Tumbler also is that it actually marks as what I think is often unrecognized thematic things throughout these movies, which is that the Tumbler is kind of the first early like implications of Bruce learning how to like learn his own and develop his own tech, because this sets up for the autopilot sequence at the end of The Dark Knight Rises,
Yeah.
because this Batmobile does not have autopilot.
Correct.
By The Dark Knight, he's developed autopilot for it, because the Batmobile drives itself at the beginning in that sequence with Scarecrow. It drives in the movie.
Intimidation mode.
Intimidation mode. Love that name, by the way. Love that. Great title. Cut forward from there to The Dark Knight Rises, when they're like, oh yeah, we developed this thing, but we can't get the autopilot to work right. What's the last thing he does? He does, he gets it working and uses it to escape. So it kind of it's again, it's I don't know if that was on purpose or not. I probably not, because again, reasons. But it's just those early seeds planted of like, yeah, developing, building on his own tech, developing autopilot. That's something he clearly has done before. It would make sense that he would know how to do it at the end of The Dark Knight Rises. So it's just, I don't like the overall design of the tumbler, but I can appreciate what it did, what it contributed to the story of this trilogy. Whether that was on purpose or not is up for debate.
Yeah, I do have to admit, like, I think I've said it before, is like it's my favorite Batmobile, but at the same time, there is no way that only Lucius Fox built it, and there aren't about 30 other people in Gotham going like, "Is that the Tumbler?"
Also, and I don't want to be that guy. You're
Don't bring in physics. Do not bring
no,
in physics. No.
that's my next point. But this point is, you're telling me, knowing, and maybe this is hindsight speaking, but you're telling me, knowing what we know about the United States military, that they wouldn't want a bunch of those tumblers? Really? You're telling me they passed up on? No, there's not a chance. I know local police departments that would have bought those things by now.
Yeah.
Like, so I have a hard time believing those didn't go into circulation. It's like, I like, no, I don't buy that. The other stuff, maybe. These, no, I don't buy that. No. If there's one thing the United States government likes to spend money on, it's boom boom toys. But also, there's no way this thing drove on the roof of an old church and didn't cave through the top of it. Absolutely not.
Cartoon
No
physics.
way.
Cartoon physics. I'm not going to defend that.
It's
It's cool as hell, but it's so cartoon
that's the one.
physics.
And honestly, that's the only part of the movie that pulls me out. Because honestly, everything, no, seriously, everything else with the tumbler up to that point, I could still buy being legit.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it drives up a giant concrete parking garage. Yeah, it's built to withstand a shitload of cars. I can believe that it's intact. I do not believe for a second that a 200-year-old church, this tank lands on top of it after blowing out a rocket engine and doesn't go through it. Absolutely not.
No, I tend to agree. I
It's
think
the
that
only
that's
time in the movie where I'm kind of like, and I'm watching a movie.
it. Yeah, there had it been like buildings to buildings. Yes, the church, that was a bit
Yeah.
much. And the only pseudo critique, not that big of a critique, is like, man, there's a lot of wanton destruction in this movie.
Well, we never go back to this part of the city ever again. You got to remember, this takes place on the Narrows. For Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, this part of the city is still closed off.
Well, probably because he destroyed it.
It is. They destroy part of Gotham City is destroyed.
Yeah.
And again, that was an element that was supposed to be a part of the original third movie. It's again, like, there was, I think, set up for a bigger story. That's just it. Christopher Nolan has said, like, yeah, they explored those possibilities, but they threw a lot of stuff out after Heath Ledger died. Um, I do wish we had gotten more with Zaz. I think the choice to include, even for as brief a screen time as we do, to include Victor Zaz in this world, was a fun choice. And I kind of wish because Zaz can be a really creepy, fun character, especially if Scarecrow's involved. And I kind of wish we'd gotten a little more of that.
Yeah. That, but I think also, like, you do have that moment of like, this is a long movie. It's a little over
Yeah.
two.
Yeah, which
Gets a
for a
lot
comic
done.
book movie at the time for 2005, this was long for a comic book movie. Most of them capped at 90 minutes
Yeah.
because
So
they were bad and they were short and they tried to make them as painless as possible.
that too.
Daredevil sucks, but man, is it short. It gets through the story. It's not a good story, but it gets it over with.
Hey, the director's cut of that movie is pretty good.
The director's cut is watchable.
Yeah.
The director's cut is watchable. I don't know what more else we can say about this movie, Matt. I really don't. A, because we've been talking about it for a very long time, but also because, I mean, it's such a well-made movie. it's such a well-made movie. And I remember being as a Batman fan who was willing to take a chance on another Batman movie, who had seen very little marketing for this movie, to be honest with you, at the time. I went and saw this on a random Thursday afternoon with my uncle. I was visiting family out of town for the summer, and he and I went to the movie, and then I was like, yeah, let's go. And I walked out of it like that was incredible. Like it's stuck. It's one of the first few movies I remember sticking with me after I watched it.
Yeah,
And I hate that has been so long since I've last seen it, because then seeing it recently, I'm just like, now I can't wait to go back and watch it again. And it's like, clearly there are things in this movie that I've missed. There's probably some things that we've missed even talking about it now for almost 2 hours. Like, I know these are long, guys, and we've been complaining about it off the mic in between takes and all that, but like, these are the deep dive breakdowns. That's why we only do these once a month. It's because it's like we allowed ourselves, we've earned ourselves this time to gush about something, especially after we decimated Batman and Robin for 30 minutes. Um, I think we've earned the right to gush about a movie we love for 2 hours.
definitely.
Um, Especially a movie this good.
For sure, for sure.
Anything else you want to add?
I mean, I think you're right. We need to cut this off, or I'm going to keep going.
I
Look,
know.
it's a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
It is probably still my favorite Batman movie. Um, I think there's like, even the gripes I have are nitpicky.
Yeah.
It's not like, none of it takes me out of the movie.
Oh
None
yeah.
of it makes me go, oh, like the Katie Holmes thing. As much as I wish she was a better actress, she's not. She's terrible in relation to everybody else.
Yeah.
Not that she is a horrible actress per
No, no, no,
se.
no. She's just not right for this movie.
She looks 10 years too young and just doesn't
She does have
have.
she does have a baby face.
Yeah.
That is a thing I will say. She does have a baby
Yeah,
face.
here we go. Here we go. Okay. This is what makes me. This is what I was watching. And I've always thought this was weird. Okay. So Bruce Wayne
Mm-hmm.
is in college.
Yep.
He comes back.
Yep.
So we don't know what his degree is, but for argument's sake,
Mm-hmm.
let's say it's a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
Let's say he's a senior.
Okay.
That means he's 22.
Right, because at that point, Rachel's already working for the DA's office.
How is that possible?
Well, she could just be. Well, she's not a prosecutor at that point. She's not a prosecutor at that point.
They don't
But
necessarily say.
I'm also curious about that, because the way Bruce Wayne is depicted, he might just be Van Wildering this thing, and might just be perpetually just have been in college and never finished, because it's evident he doesn't give a shit.
Yes. I think this is where I think any semblance of what age people are, I think would have helped some of that. Because to me, there's no way a 22-year-old is working at the DA's office, regardless of what she's
Okay,
doing.
so looking at Wikipedia, when Chill is released from prison, he's been in prison for 15 years.
Okay. So
So
he was 25.
So, well, that's assuming he's not 10 years old at the beginning of the movie.
I think he's 8.
I think he's like 12 or 13. He looks older than Bruce usually looks in these movies.
I'd say he's 10 or 12 if he's lucky. Let's just say 10.
Let's call him 12.
Okay.
I'm going to say 12.
Okay.
Because him and the girl who played young Rachel looked older than I think people are saying they are, because I think they were like 12.
Okay.
I mean, I can do math right now if you want.
No, that's if he's 12, that means he's 27.
All right. So the actor playing young Bruce was born in 93, which means in 2005 he was
12.
He was 12. Okay, so he's 12. So tack 15 years later, so he's 27. So he's 27 years old and still in college at Princeton. Sounds to me like he's been Van Wildering around. That would make her 27. 27 years old working for the DA's office makes sense.
Possibly.
Because she's not a prosecutor.
I guess that's true.
She's not the prosecutor on the case.
Yeah.
So she could still be like a paralegal or a legal assistant or something at the DA's office working on the case. Because then it's another 7, because then here it's another 7 years after that Bruce comes back to be Batman. Now 7 years, now she's in her 30s working as an ADA for the DA's office. That tracks. She just looks a lot younger than she is.
If that's the math of the movie, I guess that kind of makes sense. But that's always been my thing.
Mathematically, it tracks. Much like Robert Pattinson, though, Katie Holmes looks a lot younger than she is.
That's true.
Because as much as I love the Batman, I have to remind myself that Robert Pattinson is older than he looks.
Yeah,
because he looks so young. Guys, we talked about this movie for like almost 2 hours, and I could talk about this movie for another half hour, at most, because then that's longer than the movie. This movie rules. This movie is excellent. Batman Begins is a reason why this gets a sequel. We can't wait to talk about that sequel at the end of spooky season, at the end of October. We hope you guys, if you're still listening to this with us, good on you. Honestly, we love you. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Thank you guys who have been listening, and we've been keeping us in the top 10 on quite a few lists over on Good Pods. Thank you for that. We appreciate that. And if you haven't checked us out on Good Pods yet, they're not an ad, just in general. It's a really good podcasting app. As somebody who's been a podcaster for a long time, it's a very good podcast app.
Yes, it is.
So thank you guys, and we'll be back next week. We kick off our spooky season with spooky episodes. We're going to be doing our the evolution of the Batsuit, talking about costumes, because it's costume season for Halloween. Haha, there's a theme. We occasionally are good at content. We will talk to you guys again next time here on We Are the Batman. You can find us on Twitter at We Are the Batman. Find me on Twitter at Mr. Mike Shea.
Find me on Twitter at Mr. J Ninja.
We'll see you guys again next week. Same bat time, same bat podcast channel.
Bye-bye.